Universal monster films can top it for me, and I'll get to those soon. Number 39, Halloween. For anyone who loves the season, the movie Halloween is essential. To be honest, when I first saw it, I didn't care for it that much, but it kept growing on me, and now I try to make it a tradition to watch it every October. It adds a little bit of extra fun to the season to imagine, in the midst of all these decorations, pranks, and scares, what if there is something real sneaking around? Just walking around in October, you can almost feel this movie in the air. I'm always reminded of it when the time comes. There's something about the tale of an escaped, faceless evil stalking an ordinary neighborhood that resonates. Number 38, Planet of the Apes. This feels like a feature-length Twilight Zone episode, and hey, Rod Serling was a writer on it. It has the social commentary, a pessimistic view of human nature, and a twist ending. Every time you see it, you can get more meaning out of it. When I first saw it as a kid, it was entertaining enough just to be about a captive human trying to escape from talking apes. But as the story unfolded, it kept getting more and more interesting. And after seeing the grand scope of the whole picture, I became interested that this movie has a whole mythology behind it. We're only seeing one small part of a bigger story, and that was before they made a bunch of sequels, prequels, and reboots. Many of them are good, but the only one that's mandatory is the first one. Nothing comes close. Number 37, First Blood. What makes this stand out from most action films is that it's not just about how many things you can blow up in an hour and a half. It's more like a character study of John Rambo. There's no reason for any of the fighting. He's just a war vet who stops out of town, and the cop gives him a little bit of a hard time, and things escalated to a full-out war with one man against the entire police force. It's Grand Theft Auto, the video game, the movie. It's not your simple good guy versus bad guy. They're both at fault. There's also a lot of stealth tactics where Rambo sets traps and sneaks around as opposed to just blowing everybody up. Sylvester Stallone does a great job, and in the final scene, gives the most dramatic, emotional monologue of his career. It's not often you get to see an action star break down and cry. Number 36, Wayne's World 1 and 2, a tie. I can't decide which one's funnier. Most of the recurring gags originated in the first one, so the first one has to get the most credit, but the things I remember the most come from the second one. There's the dubbed martial arts fight, there's Christopher Walken, Garth being seduced, the dream scenes with the weird naked Indian, and the insane roadie. Beat them to death with their own shoes. He's my favorite character, but Ed O'Neill's character in the first one is a contender. With 50 movies to talk about here, I just don't have time to explain Wayne's World. But if you saw them and you love them like I do, then you get it, you know. It's just a string of funny sketches that sticks in your head and gets funnier as time goes on. When the first one came out, it was right in between my childhood and teen years. The humor was fresh and new to me, and perhaps a bit over my head. You can say it gave me an education, not just in adult humor, but also from a filmmaking standpoint. It taught me all the different cinematic ways you can be funny. You can have dream scenes. You can have multiple endings. You can talk to the camera. You can pull an actor out of a scene and replace him with Charlton Heston. You can make fun of product placement, whatever. It's a complete course in comedy. Number 35, Plan 9 from Outer Space. I saw it during my teen years when I was trying to get serious about making movies. I had no idea who Ed Wood was until the Tim Burton movie came out, and then I had to track down Plan 9, especially since it was called the worst film ever made. When I first saw it, I was actually disappointed that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I mean, the quality was low enough, but it was way too entertaining to be bad. I shared it with one of my friends, and we had fun reciting our favorite lines of dialogue and seeing how many flubs we could spot. It brought me a lot of joy, but it was also an inspiration because Ed Wood had a dream to make movies, but he didn't have the budget, so he went ahead and did it anyway. Whether you can see the strings on the spaceship or not, he still told his story. You can still see what he was trying to do. To fully understand its cult appeal, I highly recommend the documentary Flying Saucers Over Hollywood, the Plan 9 companion. Number 34, Godzilla, the original. It's hard to pick just one. I love many of the Godzilla films, all in different ways, But you gotta give it to the first one. Even though this is just one spot on the list, I think of it as a symbol for the entire genre and what it started. Looking at this individual film, in some ways it's the most authentic. Maybe the special effects weren't improved yet, but the tone feels grim and real. When Godzilla's walking through the city, there's something about seeing him in grainy black and white that makes him scarier than in other movies. I like to pretend I'm watching a real monster that was caught on film. The American edit with Raymond Burr has him narrating over lots of it, and as a kid I once recorded those parts on an audio tape so I can listen to it when I'm going to bed, and it made it sound like an old radio broadcast, kind of like Orson Welles with the famous War of the Worlds broadcast. Number 33, Dracula. This is the one that started the Universal monster cycle. Most modern audiences may find it to be slow, and I have to admit, the first time I saw it, I thought it was kind of boring, but it held me under its spell and it pulled me back for a second viewing, and then another, and then I couldn't get enough of it. It has a special mood that's hard to describe. The lack of music, the awkward pauses, and the dark visuals make for an unusual experience that's never been duplicated in any other form. Of all the classic horror films from the Golden Age, this may be the creepiest. It begs to be watched alone in a dark room late at night. The Spanish version, which was shot simultaneously, may be superior, but this one has Bela Lugosi, who's the definitive screen version of Dracula. Number 32. Full Metal Jacket. Stanley Kubrick was definitely one of those directors whose films were stronger in artistic quality than on actual story. I can understand why someone may not like 2001 or The Shining because they're slow-paced with kind of an abstract style and the plots leave you guessing. But Full Metal Jacket hits it off hard and is sure to hold anybody's attention. It's kind of funny at times, but it's also very horrific in how it shows the dehumanizing effects of war. It's like two films put together. The first half is boot camp, and the second half is the actual war. The two actors who steal the show are Vincent D'Onofrio as Private Pyle, who goes insane, and R. Lee Ermey as the drill sergeant who taught me how to swear. When I first heard his rapid-fire insult combos, it blew my mind. This is a very disturbing film, and for that reason, it's not the kind of movie I watch often. It's so powerful that you only need to see it once, and then you'll never forget it. Number 31. Scarface. If anybody can swear as good as R. Lee Ermey, it's Al Pacino. This is one instance where I choose the remake over the original, which was from 1932. It's dark, it's brutal, and it's a tragic story that centers around a bad guy character. But in the whirlwind of all these other bad characters, you feel attached to him. Even though he kills people and does some horrible things, he has his limits. He refuses to blow up a car because there's children inside. It's just an amazing character. I mean, you can watch him climb his way to the top of the gangster totem pole, and once he has the whole world in his hands, it all comes falling down on him. I just think it's a fascinating story with a character who I can't take my eyes off. Fuck you. This town is like one great big pussy just waiting to get fucked. Number 30. The Wolfman. This is my favorite of the Universal monster films. I love the whole franchise, but when it comes down to an individual film, nothing tops The Wolfman because of the way it deals with its monster. Lon Chaney Jr. is very charismatic. Unlike the other monsters, you get to know him before he becomes the Wolfman. You get to witness his whole transformation. Today they would call this origin stories. The Wolfman Begins. Actually, there's some music notes in there that sound similar to Danny Elfman's Batman score. I would bet he took inspiration from it. The only thing disappointing is that you never see a shot of the full moon and never see Larry's face turning into the wolf. This was before all those traditions first appeared, but the suspense and the pacing is perfect. The best werewolf movie, in my opinion, never surpassed. Number 29. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Jack Nicholson plays a criminal who's serving a sentence in prison. He pretends to be mentally ill so that he could be transferred to a mental institution because he thinks that would be better. That is, until he finds out he's going to be stuck there indefinitely. What I love about this movie specifically is the friendship that he shares with the other people living in the institution. Each one of them has their own personality and are all extremely different from one another. It reminds me of the friendship I had with a lot of my classmates at a special ed school where I spent 7.5 years as a kid. It awakens memories and emotions that are hidden deep inside me. The whole cast is excellent, especially Jack Nicholson, who is so good it's ridiculous. Number 28, Groundhog Day. When it came out, it seemed like it was just the funny Bill Murray movie for that weekend. But all these years later, it's still amazing. The character has to live out the same day over and over, but you get to see him react differently each time. He goes through his confused stage, his frustrated stage, his selfish stage where he takes advantage of it, his suicidal stage, his superhero stage where he's trying to help people, and his romantic stage. I can't say I've seen that many characters go through that many changes in what's actually the same day being repeated. The more I watch it, the more things I understand. Like when he and Rita fall in the snow and they share a little romantic moment, but the following day he tries to do it again. He tries to land in the same spot, but this time it's awkward and it doesn't work. He can't recreate that same moment, and that's the main thing I get out of this movie, is that in life, every moment is special. You have to take everything new as it comes. Live in the moment. Number 27, Psycho. Again, it all boils down to an interesting character. Norman Bates seems like a nice, normal guy, maybe a little socially awkward, but nothing more. But then his situation gets so complicated that a psychologist has to explain it all in the last scene, which is the only part in the whole movie that should be cut. But back then, audiences probably needed it because they couldn't believe what they just saw. Alfred Hitchcock was always pushing the boundaries. It takes a lot of unexpected turns, some of which turned into modern horror cliches, but back then they were unthinkable. I'll never forget my first time watching it, and I hope others will have that same experience, so the less said, the better. Number 26, Back to the Future 2. It was one of the first movies I saw that gave us a hypothetical look at all the future technology we were supposed to have in 2015. But more so, I thought it was a really clever idea to go back in time to the events of the first movie and see them from different angles and change the course of history even more. I can't think of many sequels that do that. It's impressive how it wraps a new plot around the first plot. It gives us more versions of the Biff character. There's old Biff, young Biff, corrupt, egotistical millionaire Biff. It expands the universe of Hill Valley, explores the characters deeper, and enhances the enjoyment of both films at the same